She wasn't even 2 years old, but Maddox Lawrence had already faced more battles than most of us do in a lifetime. Born with a smile that could melt the coldest heart, Maddox was a bright, spirited little girl who filled her parents' lives with joy. But her journey was far from easy. At just a few months old, her parents noticed something unusual. Her left eye, once bright and clear, had started to change. It darkened, and soon came the words no parent ever wants to hear: cancer. Maddox was diagnosed with retinoblastoma, a rare and aggressive form of cancer that affects the retina. What followed was a grueling fight for her life. Her weekends were spent in hospital rooms instead of playgrounds. Chemotherapy sessions that lasted hours left her small body exhausted, but she endured it all with a resilience that amazed everyone around her. Her parents, Ryan and Morgan, were right by her side through every needle prick, every sleepless night, and every tear. They rallied together, leaning on each other to get through the impossible. And together, they watched her beat the odds. Maddox survived. She was supposed to have her whole life ahead of her, a life free from the shadow of illness. Yet, the hardest part of her story was to come. Not from a relapse, not from her fragile health, but from the very man who had held her hand through her fight. A man who the world believed was her protector, her father. How does a story so full of hope and triumph take such a devastating turn? How does a father, once seen as a doting parent, become the source of his own child's nightmare? The answers would unravel a tale so harrowing that it shook an entire community to its core. This is the story of Maddox Lawrence. A little girl who overcame cancer, only to face a tragedy far worse. A betrayal no one saw coming. Maddox Lawrence was a little girl full of life and light. Her giggles could brighten the gloomiest day, and her wide, curious eyes seemed to take in the entire world with wonder. She was a happy baby, loved deeply by her parents, Ryan and Morgan Lawrence, who would do anything to keep her safe. But life wasn't easy for Maddox. Shortly after her birth, her parents noticed something unusual about her left eye. The once clear iris began to darken, and doctors soon delivered the devastating news: Maddox had retinoblastoma, a rare and aggressive cancer of the retina. What followed were months of grueling treatments. Tiny Maddox, not even old enough to understand what was happening, endured hours-long chemotherapy sessions, needles, and medical procedures that would challenge even the strongest adult. Her parents, Ryan and Morgan, were by her side through every step. They watched helplessly as their baby battled an illness that no child should ever have to face. Against all odds, Maddox survived. Her cancer went into remission, and for the first time, the family began to feel a sense of hope. The days of hospital visits and fear were behind them, or so they thought. Maddox's life was meant to be filled with the simple joys of childhood, chasing bubbles, dancing to music, and cuddling with her parents. Instead, her greatest battle was yet to come. And this time, it wasn't one she could fight. Ryan Lawrence, her father, was known to everyone as a devoted dad. Neighbors saw him cradling Maddox in one arm while delivering pastries for work, her little head resting on his shoulder as if she didn't have a care in the world. To the outside world, he appeared to be everything a father should be: loving, attentive, and protective. But appearances can be deceiving, and no one could have imagined the darkness that would soon engulf this family. On February 20, 2016, Maddox disappeared. Her mother, Morgan, came home from work to an empty house. There was no laughter, no tiny footsteps running to greet her, only silence. A chilling note and an 8-minute video were all Ryan left behind. In the video, he spoke directly to Morgan, his words vague and unsettling. "I'm leaving, and I'm taking her with me," he said. The cryptic message sent waves of panic through Morgan. Her husband and daughter were gone, and she had no idea where they were, or if she would ever see them again. The community of Syracuse, New York, rallied together, hoping for the best but fearing the worst. Search teams scoured parks, rivers, and wooded areas. An Amber Alert was issued, and police helicopters circled the skies. But as hours turned into days, the hope of finding Maddox alive began to waver. What could have driven a father to take his own child? And why had he left behind a note that hinted at something so unimaginable? This case didn't just shake a family, it tore apart a community. People who had seen Ryan and Maddox together couldn't believe it. How could a man who seemed so devoted to his daughter suddenly become a source of danger? What was he running from, or running toward? Maddox's story isn't just one of tragedy, it's a story that forces us to confront the unimaginable. It raises questions about trust, love, and the unthinkable actions of a parent who was supposed to be her protector. This is a story of heartbreak and betrayal, a story that will stay with you long after it's told. Maddox Lawrence was born in 2014, a bright-eyed, beautiful baby girl whose laughter could light up a room. From the moment she entered the world, she brought a unique joy to her parents, Ryan and Morgan. But Maddox's life was far from ordinary. Before her first birthday, her parents noticed something unusual, a change in the color of her left eye. Initially, it seemed insignificant, but as the weeks passed, the darkening deepened. Concern turned to fear, and their worst suspicions were confirmed. Maddox had retinoblastoma, a rare and aggressive cancer of the retina. The diagnosis was devastating. Maddox was just a baby, innocent and unaware of the uphill battle ahead of her. For her parents, it was a nightmare they couldn't escape. Their weekends became dominated by trips to Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City, where Maddox underwent chemotherapy. Each treatment was grueling, 6 hours hooked to machines, fighting a battle her tiny body barely seemed capable of enduring. Yet, through it all, Maddox's spirit shone brightly. She giggled, played, and found joy even in the smallest moments. Her aunt, Shaylin Leonard, affectionately recalled Maddox's monster noises and how her unique personality made her unforgettable. By her first birthday, Maddox had beaten cancer. Her parents celebrated the victory, believing their daughter's future was finally secure. Maddox was more than a survivor, she was a symbol of hope, resilience, and love. Ryan Lawrence, Maddox's father, was born and raised in Baldwinsville, New York. He was a talented artist, earning recognition in high school for his creativity and skill. But Ryan's life was shadowed by loss. At just 17 years old, he lost his mother, Mary, to kidney cancer. Her death deeply affected him, leaving a wound that never fully healed. Mary had worked as a victim advocate in the district attorney's office, dedicating her life to helping others. Ryan often spoke of her with reverence, but her absence left a void that shaped much of his adulthood. After high school, Ryan drifted through life. He worked a series of low-paying jobs, including delivering pastries and working at a co-op. It was during one of these jobs at Destiny USA Mall that he met Morgan, a hard-working young woman with her own dreams and ambitions. Their connection was instant, and soon, they were inseparable. When Morgan became pregnant, they decided to marry and build a life together. From the outside, Ryan seemed like a devoted husband and father. Neighbors often saw him carrying Maddox on his hip while working his delivery job. His bond with her appeared unshakable. But Ryan struggled internally. Friends described him as a dreamer, often lost in unrealistic fantasies. While he loved Maddox, his self-esteem wavered. The pressure of fatherhood, combined with unresolved grief and financial strain, began to weigh heavily on him. It was February 20, 2016, when the Lawrence family's life took an unimaginable turn. That evening, Ryan dropped Morgan off at work, a routine they followed often. But something was different that night. Morgan's shift ended late, and instead of picking her up, Ryan sent her a strange text. He told her the car was parked in the lot with the keys inside and that she should drive herself home. When Morgan arrived at their house, a wave of panic washed over her. The home was eerily quiet, and Ryan and Maddox were nowhere to be found. On the table, she discovered a note. It was cryptic and troubling, hinting that Ryan might harm himself or Maddox. Even more chilling was the 8-minute video Ryan had left behind. In it, he said he was leaving and taking Maddox with him. His words were vague but carried an ominous weight. Terrified, Morgan called the police, and an Amber Alert was issued. The search for Maddox began immediately. Law enforcement scoured parks, rivers, and wooded areas. Helicopters circled the city, while officers and volunteers searched on foot. The entire community held its breath, praying for Maddox's safe return. 2 days later, a breakthrough came. Ryan was spotted in Baldwinsville, disguised and carrying camping gear. When approached by police, he initially lied about his identity but soon confessed. What he revealed was unthinkable. He admitted to killing Maddox and directed investigators to the location of her remains. Ryan described how he had driven Maddox to Labrador Hollow, a remote state recreation area. There, in the stillness of the forest, he placed her on the ground and struck her with a baseball bat. He then burned her body along with the bat and placed her remains in a weighted yellow bag. He drove to Syracuse's inner harbor and disposed of the bag in the water. The confession shattered any lingering hope. Maddox, the little girl who had fought so hard to live, was gone. The community was left reeling, struggling to comprehend how a father could commit such an unfathomable act. The search for Maddox's body was painstaking. Divers combed the frigid waters of the inner harbor, eventually recovering her remains. The discovery was so harrowing that police chaplains were brought in to support the officers involved. During questioning, Ryan revealed his motive: jealousy. He resented the attention Maddox had received during her cancer treatments, feeling overshadowed and unimportant. His confession painted a picture of a man consumed by insecurity and bitterness, unable to see beyond his own pain. The forensic evidence corroborated Ryan's account, leaving no doubt about his guilt. Prosecutors described the case as one of the most emotionally devastating they had ever handled. For the detectives and the community, the loss of Maddox was more than a crime, it was a tragedy that defied explanation. As Ryan Lawrence's confession unraveled, it became clear that this was a crime of premeditation rather than impulse. Investigators discovered that Ryan had meticulously planned Maddox's murder. The camping gear he carried when apprehended was not a coincidence. He had anticipated evading capture, hiding in the wilderness, and living off the grid. He had even researched locations where Maddox's remains could be concealed. For law enforcement, piecing together the details of Maddox's final hours was both necessary and heartbreaking. The yellow bag Ryan had weighted and sunk in the inner harbor became a haunting symbol of the crime. Forensic experts examined every piece of evidence, but what stood out most was the senselessness of it all. Ryan's motive, a toxic mix of jealousy and self-pity, offered little solace to those searching for meaning. Morgan Lawrence, Maddox's mother, was shattered by the revelations. To the public, she appeared stoic, but those close to her saw the unbearable weight she carried. She had lost her daughter and her husband in one horrific act, and the world's eyes were upon her as she tried to process the unimaginable. The Syracuse community mourned alongside her. Vigils were held across the city, and flowers and teddy bears were left outside the Lawrence home. Strangers who had followed Maddox's cancer journey felt a personal connection to her loss. This was not just the story of a family's tragedy, it was a collective heartbreak. Psychologists and criminologists later weighed in on Ryan's actions, attempting to unravel the complexities of his mind. Ryan had expressed feelings of inadequacy, telling investigators that he felt overshadowed by Maddox's story. Her survival had made her a beacon of hope in the community, but for Ryan, it highlighted his own perceived failures. Ryan also spoke of his fear that Maddox would develop cancer again and endure more pain. While this reasoning struck some as genuine, others saw it as a thinly veiled excuse. Prosecutors argued that Ryan's feelings of unworthiness and jealousy had festered over time, driving him to commit an act he wrongly believed would solve his internal struggles. Experts debated whether Ryan's mental health issues, combined with unresolved grief from his mother's death, contributed to his actions. However, these discussions offered little comfort to those grieving Maddox. Her death was a tragedy that no analysis could ever justify. Ryan Lawrence was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for Maddox's murder. The sentence, while severe, felt hollow to many. As Maddox's aunt Shaylin Leonard said during her victim impact statement, no punishment can ever bring her back. Morgan Lawrence faced an uphill battle of her own. In the years that followed, she spoke sparingly about the ordeal, choosing instead to focus on preserving Maddox's memory. Friends and family described her as a pillar of strength, even in the face of unimaginable loss. The Syracuse community continued to honor Maddox through fundraisers, memorials, and awareness campaigns for childhood cancer. Her story became a cautionary tale about the fragility of life and the hidden struggles that can exist within a family. For law enforcement, the case remained a painful reminder of the darkness they sometimes face. Officers who worked on the investigation described it as one of the most emotionally taxing cases of their careers. The memory of Maddox, a little girl with so much life left to live, stayed with them long after the case was closed. As time passed, the legacy of Maddox Lawrence became one of resilience and love. Despite the horrors she endured, her story inspired countless people to cherish their loved ones and seek help in moments of struggle. Her bright smile, captured in countless photos, served as a reminder that even in the darkest of tragedies, the light of her spirit would never fade. What could possibly push a father to destroy the life of his own child? Maddox Lawrence was not just any child, she was a survivor, a fighter who had overcome a battle with cancer before she could even form sentences. Her laughter lit up every room she entered, and her determination inspired everyone who knew her. Yet, despite her resilience, she couldn't escape the person who was supposed to be her protector. As the story unfolds, one can't help but ask, could this tragedy have been prevented? Were there signs that Ryan Lawrence, a father once described as loving and attentive, was struggling beneath the surface? The details of the case are chilling, but they also raise a haunting question for us all: how well do we truly know those closest to us? Was Maddox ever truly safe? Did anyone suspect the depths of Ryan's despair and jealousy? Or was this a tragedy that no one could have foreseen? Do you think Ryan's punishment fits the crime? And more importantly, how do we prevent such unimaginable betrayals in the future? What legacy will Maddox Lawrence leave behind, and how will we ensure her story is never forgotten? This case is as heartbreaking as it is baffling. Let us know in the comments, what do you think could drive someone to commit such an act? And how can we, as a society, ensure it never happens again? Maddox Lawrence was a beacon of hope in a world that so often feels dark. At just 21 months old, she had already fought the battle of her life and won. Diagnosed with retinoblastoma, a rare and aggressive cancer that targeted her small, fragile body, Maddox faced a future that seemed uncertain at best. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, she emerged victorious. Her recovery, an act of sheer will, was a testament to her strength and the power of love and family. The joy that filled her home was undeniable. Her parents, Ryan and Morgan, rejoiced in their daughter's survival, grateful for the second chance they had been given. There's a photo that captures the essence of those early days: Maddox, a small but determined child, sitting on her mother's lap, her eyes sparkling with life. A child who had beaten cancer, beaten death itself, and now, she was ready to begin her life, free from the grip of illness. It was a moment of pure triumph. But as we all know, life can shift in an instant. It was only a matter of time before something threatened to shatter that fragile peace. The signs of trouble weren't immediately clear. For a while, Ryan Lawrence appeared to be the devoted father. He worked hard, delivering pastries for a local coffee shop, often taking Maddox along with him. Neighbors recall the bond between father and daughter, the way he always kept her close, carried her when needed, and ensured she was never left behind. But as time passed, something started to change. Ryan, who had once been a loving, devoted father, began to show signs of growing instability. The man who once seemed so caring and selfless now seemed distant, lost in a world of his own frustrations and insecurities. Perhaps it was the strain of living in the shadow of his daughter's illness. Perhaps it was the jealousy he began to feel, jealous of the attention Maddox received from her mother, jealous of the love and affection Morgan poured into their daughter. But whatever it was, something inside Ryan began to unravel. It wasn't just that he was a father struggling with his emotions, it was that he was a man who felt overshadowed by the very child he had fought to protect. Was this jealousy the spark that ignited a much darker path? The change in Ryan was gradual, almost imperceptible at first. He became withdrawn and distant as if the weight of the world had become too much for him to bear. And then, on that fateful February night, he made a choice that would leave a community shattered and a family broken beyond repair. What led him to commit the unthinkable? To take the life of his own daughter, the very child who had fought so hard to stay alive. As the timeline unfolds, the unease grows. What had seemed like a normal evening, a simple drive to pick up Morgan from work, quickly turned into a nightmare. Ryan's actions became erratic. A strange text from him, a note left behind, and a chilling video addressed to Morgan, "I'm leaving, and I'm taking her with me." And just like that, Maddox was gone. The frantic search that followed was a community in shock. How could this be happening? Where was Maddox? Where was Ryan? But as the police pieced together the fragments of the puzzle, the horrifying truth emerged. Ryan had taken his daughter to a secluded area in the woods, where he ended her life with a baseball bat. It was an act of unspeakable cruelty, a moment of violence that would forever change the course of so many lives. As Ryan's confession came to light, it was clear that this was not an act of a father in a moment of madness, it was premeditated. Ryan had taken his daughter's life out of jealousy, resentment, and a deep emotional instability that had festered over time. The realization that a father could betray his own child in such a brutal way was unfathomable. How could this happen? How could Ryan, who had once been so dedicated to his daughter's survival, now be the one to take that survival away from her? The grief felt by Maddox's mother, Morgan, was unimaginable. The loss of her daughter, the betrayal of her partner, and the pain of knowing that the very person who should have been her daughter's protector was the one who ended her life left her in pieces. She would never be able to hold Maddox again, never be able to hear her laugh or see her smile. The shockwaves of that loss rippled through the community as well, friends, family, neighbors, and strangers alike, all of them left to process the horror of what had happened. As the investigation unfolded, the impact on law enforcement was undeniable. Police officers, detectives, and the community were left grappling with the emotional toll of the crime. They had seen tragedy before, but nothing like this. Nothing that tore at the very fabric of trust between a father and a daughter. Maddox's story reminds us of the fragility of life and the importance of protecting the most vulnerable among us. Her life was taken far too soon, and the promise of her future, of a life filled with possibility and joy, was stolen in an instant. But even in her short time with us, Maddox left a mark on the world. She was a fighter, a survivor, and a reminder of the strength that exists in all of us, even in the face of unimaginable odds. Her story is one of love, loss, and the heartbreaking reality that the people we trust the most are sometimes the ones who can cause the most harm. The tragedy of Maddox Lawrence's life and the unimaginable betrayal that ended it is not one we can simply forget. If this story moved you, if you felt the weight of her loss and the sorrow that has left an indelible mark on her family and community, please take a moment to like and share this video. Let's keep Maddox's memory alive. Let her story serve as a reminder of the fragility of life, the importance of protecting the most vulnerable, and the devastating consequences of unheeded pain. Your support means more than just views, it keeps her story, her struggle, and her survival in the hearts of many who may never have known her name but will carry her memory forward. And don't forget, this is just one of many cases we'll explore. Next time, we'll cover a chilling disappearance that still haunts the authorities to this day. A case shrouded in mystery, where the answers remain elusive, and the people involved continue to wonder what really happened. The search for truth is never over. We invite you to join us next time as we unravel another heartbreaking tale that will leave you questioning everything. Until then, remember, each life, each story, matters. Share these stories, keep the conversation going, and let us honor those who can no longer tell their own. Thank you for watching.